Okay, so since we're recording, I guess we can go ahead and get started. Hi, Natalia and Marcella. Hi to the undergraduate research office people. I'll introduce myself to you guys. I'm Allison Charter, and I'm the president of SACNAS this year. And we are trying really hard to get a lot of people to go to the SACNAS conference in the fall next year, and I'll explain a little bit about that. Oops, wrong button. Okay, so I'll go through like what the SACNAS conference is, and then pass it on to you. Cool. And then hopefully we'll be joined by Tom Magliery from chemistry, who will talk about abstract writing. Okay, so SACNAS is the Society for the Advancement of Hispanics, Chicanos, and Native Americans in Science. It's a national organization, and we have a chapter here at Ohio State that has been in we were established in 2014, and we really seek to build a supportive community for students of color and other underrepresented backgrounds here at Ohio State. We do a lot of professional development, some social events, and some community outreach throughout the year. So that's really exciting and fun. And the conference is a national event, and it's annual. So this is put on by like the national SACNAS organization. And it boasts cutting edge STEM research, professional development, motivational keynote speakers, huge graduate and career fair expo thing, lots of multicultural traditions and celebrations. And it's super inclusive and very welcoming. They really try to get everyone to bring their whole selves to STEM. And so that's kind of like the crux of the whole conference. And this year it's in Puerto Rico in October. So we're really excited. But the application is coming up for research presentations. So for graduate students and undergrads who have done research throughout the year, our abstract applications are due on April 15th. And so are the travel award applications. And I went through that process on Tuesday. But really like the thing about today is we're hoping to get some undergraduates involved in summer research so that they can apply in the summer. So their deadlines would be, they can start applying June 8th, deadline is July 8th. And of course they can submit like expected results if they don't have them quite yet, because they'll have 3 more months to get their presentations together. And I think that's all I wanted to say for now. So I'll pass it over to Jayden from Office of Undergraduate Research.
All right, everyone should be able to see my screen now, and hopefully you all can hear me okay. As I said, or as Allison said, my name is Jayden Messer. I am a graduate student working for undergraduate research and creative inquiry. Today, I'm going to chat with you all about how to get involved with research. Yeah, the desktop isn't doing it, but the laptop is, so we're good. You're good. Yeah, so I'm going to briefly go over some of what our steps are for getting involved with undergraduate research for those of you who may not already be involved with research and you're looking to get started. So a brief overview of what we're going to go over today is why get involved with research to begin with. How do you get involved at Ohio State? And this includes going over what we call our 3 steps to getting started. I'm going to go over some resources that the undergraduate research office can provide for you as you're going through your research process. And then I'll end with contact information for our office and any questions that you all might have that I can answer for you. So getting started, why do research? What's the point of it? What do you get out of it? Why do we at Ohio State talk so much about doing research? Well, to be honest, there are many different benefits of participating in undergraduate research. Starting with academic benefits, you get the chance to work very closely with a faculty member. This can be important for a number of different reasons, but the main one being that you're working with someone potentially in your department, and that can really help you with your academics if you're struggling in a class or anything like that. You already have a faculty member that you've made a connection with that you can chat with a little bit deeper. You also get the chance to apply some concepts that you're learning in the classroom to real life situations. So research is one of the things that we like to call experiential learning opportunities, which basically means that this is giving you a chance outside of the classroom to start applying these concepts in the way that you might after you graduate. So it's just kind of giving you a little taste of what that's like to apply those concepts. And of course, you get to learn more about your chosen field of interest if you decide to stay within your field to do research. So something that I do want to note is that you don't have to stay within your major to do research at Ohio State. Feel free to look outside of your major to find areas of interest that you might have. But the benefits don't stop with your academics. There's also a number of different professional benefits that come from doing research as an undergraduate student. As I mentioned, you can develop relevant and marketable skills. It looks great on your resume or CV, and having the experience of doing research as an undergraduate might help you get a job in the future or get into a grad school or whatever you're doing post-graduation. It also gives you the opportunity to explore and prepare for your future career. So personally, the research that I did in undergrad actually showed me that the field of interest that I thought I wanted to do as a career wasn't the right field for me. My roommate, on the other hand, did research in her undergrad that really solidified that she was in the right field. So regardless of how that goes for you, doing research can really allow you the chance to explore and prepare for whatever your future career field may be. And it can provide you an opportunity to network within your field. So in a little bit, we'll talk about conferences, and that's what this whole presentation is about for you over the past 2 days. But that is a great way to network within your field, which can help you in your future career. Again, as you're looking for jobs, as you're looking to go to grad school, networking can be a really important part of that. And of course, there are personal benefits to doing research as well. So you can develop some internal standards of excellence, meet your own challenges, and complete projects, which is just like satisfying from an internal sense, and discovering your personal interests. So as I mentioned, you don't have to stay within your major to do research. So research can be an opportunity to really discover some areas of interest that you have and dive deeper into those than you might get to outside of doing research. So hopefully at this point, those benefits have excited you and you're ready to get involved with undergraduate research, but it may be a little intimidating to know how to start doing that, especially at a school as large as Ohio State. So I want to ease some of your concerns that you might be feeling and letting you know that getting started in research is not as scary as it may seem. Our office provides plenty of resources and information for you to get started. So you're not alone. Yeah, do you have a question?
I'm so sorry.
You're good.
I just missed your office is again what? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's the Office of Undergraduate Research and Creative Inquiry. So there will be contact information at the very end of the presentation for you. So our office can provide plenty of resources and different information to help you get started. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a couple of slides as well. But something I want to note here is that most of the students at Ohio State who do get involved with undergraduate research are ones that reach out to faculty directly to get involved and not the other way around. So our students are not just waiting around to be offered a chance to do research. Most of our students are kind of taking that initiative to reach out to faculty members to look for research positions. And that level of initiative there is really important in getting involved with research. So if that's something that you're interested in, here's how we can help you get started. So we always like to present our 3 steps to getting involved with research. The first of which is defining a topic of interest. This basically comes down to narrowing down specific topics either inside or outside of your field that you are interested in researching, which can help you get the process started. Now, it doesn't have to be super specific. You don't have to know for example, a very specific disease that you want to research, but starting really broad at your major of interest or your area of interest and narrowing help you with our second step, which is identifying potential faculty members to work with. Most of our students will utilize departmental faculty directories to find research faculty that they might want to work with. This can seem a little intimidating, but a lot of our departmental a lot of our departmental directories allow you to filter faculty members based on their research interests. Not all of them though. So if you happen to be in a department that your directory doesn't allow you to do that, another thing that you can do is actually click on the bios of these professors. They may have research interests listed on their academic bio. And if worse comes to worse, you can't find any information about these faculty members, a good thing to do is always to look up some possible publications that they've submitted. You don't have to read their whole paper or anything like that, but even just looking at titles of things that they've published or reading some abstracts of works that they've done can help give you an idea of what these professors are researching and help you find faculty members that are studying or researching rather something that you want to research. And the final step here is contacting those potential faculty members. So learning how to send these professional emails is a really great skill to learn moving forward, but it also allows you to make that personal connection point with your faculty members. Now, you don't have to only contact them through email. If you want to reach out to a faculty member that actually teaches one of your classes, I highly recommend going to their office hours. That is a great way to connect with them and to talk to them about their research in person, which can give you a better connection with them than if you just email them. But you may not know these faculty members directly, so feel free to email them out of the blue of sorts to inquire about getting involved with research. And there's really 2 or 3 different ways that students will get involved with research here. The main one is asking if faculty members are currently doing research that you can help them with. The second thing would be if you want to do your own research project, contacting faculty members to ask them to serve as a faculty mentor for your research. And the third thing would be getting involved with a lab. Now, Ohio State has a lot of different labs on our campus. They're all run by faculty members. So when you're looking up these faculty, you may see that they are in charge of a lab, and you can ask them if they are accepting undergraduate volunteers, or if you can get involved with a project that their lab is doing. And these are all valid things to bring up when you are reaching out to faculty members to get involved with research. So to talk about some timing and balance with research, there really is no one right time to get started with research. At Ohio State, we have students start doing research as early as their first semester on campus and as late as their senior year. So the right time to get involved is going to be completely up to you and how you balance your time within your academic program and with any other things that you are involved with at Ohio State. We do want to note here, of course, that you are coming to Ohio State to graduate with a degree. You're here to go to class. So we want your academics to take priority. We don't want you to prioritize necessarily getting involved with research over your classwork, for example. So keep that in mind as you're looking at the timing and balance that's right for you to get started. And the last thing I want to note is that if you're looking at undergoing a major research project of your own, where you're asking someone to serve as a faculty mentor, that research might take a little longer than you expect. So getting started earlier in that case might be better than waiting until your senior year, for example, where you might not give yourself enough time to actually satisfyingly finish your research. So just keep in mind how large the project is that you're hoping to undertake when you're looking at when to start. And of course, there are a lot of benefits to research that go far beyond complementing what you learn in the classroom. So here at Ohio State, there are a number of different ways to receive funding for doing research. Our office in particular hosts summer funding for students who are doing research, but there's also funding available through nearly every department on our campus, specifically for student researchers. So if that is something that you need or that you want while doing research, definitely look into that. Completing research as an undergraduate student also gives you the opportunity to complete a thesis. Now, most students on our campus are not required to do theses in order to graduate. Some students might be, depending on your program, but completing a research thesis as an undergraduate student does allow you to graduate with a specific kind of distinction if you would like to apply for that, and complete a thesis, which later we'll talk about can potentially be published. It also gives you the opportunity to present at a conference. Obviously, that's what we are talking about here, is presenting at conferences. This picture that you see here on my presentation is from when our office took students to Germany in 2019 to participate in an international research competition, conference rather. So obviously, that's a very specific case, but I encourage you to look into not only research opportunities here on presentation opportunities here on our campus, but also at national conferences or international conferences like you all are talking about here. And finally, like I mentioned, publishing in a journal. Whether you complete a thesis or not, participating in research does give you the opportunity to potentially publish that research. This can be important to a number of different people for a number of different reasons. One of those being that it would look great on a resume and CV when you're applying to jobs and grad schools to already have a publication under your belt. It also allows you the chance to network even more, get your work out there so other people can see it and can possibly, benefit from the research that you've done. So those are just some of the many different ways that research can benefit you outside of Ohio State as well. Now, we always like to cover some of these frequently asked questions because these are questions that almost everyone has, so we like to just get them out of the way. The first one being, how many hours a week is dedicated to research? To be completely honest, that is totally up to you and your faculty mentor in determining how much time you will dedicate to research in a week. Some research postings or laboratories that you might work with, they might give you a specific minimum time commitment that they want you to meet when you start working with them. But the vast majority of students doing research set their own hours with their faculty mentor. So I can't really give you a perfect number for that. I would say most of our students probably complete their research using about 10 to 15 hours a week, but that is not a hard and fast rule. It is completely up to you and your faculty mentor. Are there any requirements to getting started with research? The short answer is no. The only requirement to getting started with research at Ohio State is that you want to do the research at Ohio State. I will put a little asterisk and a caveat there that some of our STEM faculty in particular, they do like to see that some students have completed certain lab courses before they will work with you on a research project, just to make sure that they know what kind of education in research you're bringing into their work. And so because of that, we typically recommend when you reach out to professors that you include a resume and particularly a list of lab courses that you've taken already at Ohio State, or any other relevant courses that might be in the field that you're looking to do research in. That can often help professors understand what you're bringing to their research. But overall, in general, there are not any specific requirements for doing research at Ohio State. And the final question that we get often is, are student researchers compensated? The short answer is not really. I mentioned funding a few minutes ago. That is one way that students can be quote unquote compensated for doing their research. There may also be research positions that are posted on our website or shown to you by faculty members that may provide compensation of some sort. Many of our students do get compensated in the form of class credit through independent study credit or research credit in your field or whatever field you're doing research in. But as far as monetary compensation goes, this is a little bit more difficult for our student researchers to get. So basically what I normally say is, if you're looking at getting involved with research as a job, maybe not the best way to go, but if you are participating in research and want to apply for funding to help you complete that research, there may be funding opportunities available, but they're not guaranteed. Did you have a question about that?
Yes, sorry, I did. This might be specific to STEM. Do you know about if y'all have the LSAMP program here, the Lewis Stokes? You do? Okay.
We do, yeah. It is housed in the Office of Diversity and Inclusion.
Okay.
So I would definitely contact them if you're looking to get involved.
I can put you in touch.
Thank you. So those are kind of our frequently asked questions that we get a lot, but I'm happy to take additional questions that you all have when we get to that point. The last thing I want to go over is, how can our office help you? Obviously, we're already taking that first step by doing this presentation for you and explaining to you how to get involved. But our office also has a number of different resources available for students, including advising appointments. So in these appointments, you'll meet with a staff member and we will go over the ways to get started. Basically, in an advising appointment, I'm going to go over with you, or Caitlin will, all of the things that we just talked about, but very specific to your major and your areas of interest. So in our appointments, we pull up those faculty directories and go through them with you. We will show you labs on campus that may be relevant to what you specifically are looking for in research. We may also be able to show you funding sources that are relevant to you and other things that may be relevant specifically to your areas of interest. So I definitely recommend, once you start looking into getting involved, reaching out to our office and scheduling an advising appointment if you need help with that process. Another thing that we offer that I've talked about a couple of times is grants and funding. So like I said, our office has a summer funding opportunity. Unfortunately, the deadline to apply for that has already passed. So it would not be able to help you for this upcoming summer. But as long as you are not graduating next year, definitely reach out to our office in the spring semester very early on, and we can help you apply for that summer funding through our office.
What is that deadline? In each year?
Yes, good question. Let me see if I remember. Do you remember? Did you see it when you were? No, it was way earlier than that. Yeah, it's typically sometime in January or February. It's pretty early on because we get way too many applications and we have to review the applications and decide who we're actually giving the funding to. So typically happens fairly early on. February 6th, thank you. So typically that will open right when we get back. Actually, I think this year it actually opened on January 1st. So there was a little bit of time during winter break for you to fill the application out. And the deadline was February 6th, and we had a lot of applicants. So if you're looking to do that, definitely take some time on your application. But we can also connect you to other funding sources on campus. So like I mentioned, we do know about some funding that is available on campus, and we can also advise you on how to find other sources of funding that we may not know about in our office. And finally, we do offer presentation opportunities, a number of different presentation opportunities. We have undergraduate research festivals in the autumn and the spring. Just as a small plug, our spring undergraduate research festival is coming up on April 7th, and it's going to be held in the ideation zone at Pomerine Hall. So if you're interested in seeing what a completed research project looks like and what it looks like to present a poster at a conference or something like that, definitely come check out our Spring Research Festival. Anyone is allowed to drop by and look at the research being done by our undergraduate students. We also host the Denman Undergraduate Research Forum every year. This research forum is specifically for graduating seniors, and it is more competitive. There are prizes awarded in different categories for the Denman. And it's a pretty prestigious event on our campus. So if you're looking for something a little bit more heightened of an opportunity during your senior year, the Denman would be a great presentation opportunity to look into. And we also do a thing called the 3-minute thesis competition, which is essentially a chance for you to give an elevator pitch, 3-minute elevator pitch specifically, of your research that you're doing. What's important about the 3-minute thesis competition is it can really prepare you for those very quick moments that you might have at a networking opportunity or something along those lines to tell someone about your research. It's going to give you that opportunity to really formulate how to condensely talk about your research, which can be an important skill if you plan on being a researcher for a while. And that's pretty much it. So here's our contact information. Feel free to write down our website, our email address. I will make a note here that this phone number does go directly to our front office, of which the phone is manned by students in the Kuhn Honors and Scholars House. They may be able to answer very general questions like deadlines for things or when things are happening. But as far as really hyper-specific research questions, they probably won't be able to answer those. So we recommend emailing us instead of calling us. And then our address is 220 West 12th Avenue in the Kuhn Honors and Scholars House. So if you schedule an advising appointment, those will either be held in person at the Kuhn House or virtually. Personally, my advising appointments are virtual, but when Caitlin starts doing advising appointments, I don't know how you plan on doing yours. So some of those may be in person, and that's where you'll go for those. And that's pretty much all I have for you. So with that being said, does anyone have questions? Anyone in the room, anyone online, feel free to type your questions out in the chat if you have any questions, and I'm happy to address those for you. Yeah.
I'm curious if professors ever like reach out to you, like looking for students, and also whether you advise students to maybe reach out to like grad students or postdocs.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can answer both those questions for you. So the first question being if professors ever reach out to us looking for students, the answer is yes, sometimes. In these cases, we will post that they are looking for students in our newsletter. So if you're not on the listserv to get emails from us, from our office, I recommend sending us an email so that way we can get you on our listserv. We also have a tab on our website, which I can actually pull up for everyone, where we have research postings that faculty members have submitted to our office. Now the caveat of the research posting, it'd be helpful if I typed in the right thing. Let me share this again. So this is our website right here, the website of undergraduate research and creative inquiry. This tab over here to the very end says research postings. If you click on that, you can see a number of different postings that faculty members have submitted looking for student researchers. Now, something I will say about this, this is in no way a comprehensive list of faculty members who are looking for students. These are just the ones who have actually went to our website and submitted a posting for it. Unfortunately, with Ohio State being such a large institution, our office really has no way of knowing every single opportunity available, which is why we advise students reach out to faculty directly, because there may be a lot of opportunities happening that our office just simply doesn't know about because we aren't told about them. So we do our best to collect the information as much as we can, but we can only do as much as the faculty members give us. So this can be a really easy way to get involved with a research project if you want to look over these research postings and if anything stands out to you. The nice thing about this page, and I think I have a pointer. You can't really see it. Bummer. The nice thing about this page that you can see here is that it actually lists like an application deadline, the department that's hosting it. This is where I was talking about like the time commitments. It'll show you how many hours they expect you to work in a week. And it straight up says like what your possible compensation might be. So this is definitely a useful page when it is used by faculty members. So I definitely recommend checking this out. And also just a plug for ourselves as well. If you ever hear your professors talking about looking for undergraduate researchers, tell them to post it on our website. Because, you know, there are students out there who do refresh this page and look for positions on there. So yes, hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah.
And then the second question of recommending students reach out to grad students and postdocs. Typically, that is not a part of our regimen of what we recommend to students. The only reason for that is that a lot of grad students are working, when they're working on their own research, they're maybe not ready to undergo a supervisory level of experience with an undergraduate student to have them help with their research. Likewise, the research that they're doing is kind of a make or break for their ability to graduate. And some of them don't really feel comfortable leaving some of that in the hands of undergrads. That being said, you are more than welcome to reach out to grad students. I have certainly had students reach out to me and say that they've reached out to a couple of faculty members and they have gotten a lot of no's and they don't really know what to do from there. And in that case, my next step would be, well, check out some grad students and see if any of them need help. You might not get the same level of support with a grad student that you might get from a faculty mentor, but all grad students should also have a faculty mentor. So working with a grad student might kind of allow you to work with their faculty mentor in a way. So it can be kind of a way of getting around that a little bit. I know a lot less about post-grad researchers, so I would never tell you that you can't reach out to them. We just typically work directly with faculty, so that's usually our go-to when we're making those recommendations. Anyone else have any questions that I can answer? Well, thank you all for letting me join you and give you this information. If you have additional questions after today, or if you want to set up an advising appointment or anything like that, please feel free to contact our office. You can schedule an advising appointment on our website. If you go under the new researchers tab, I think one of the first options is request an advising appointment. So you can follow the instructions there, or you can just email us and we can help you do that as well. Yeah, that's all I've got for you. Thank you.
Thank you. This is Tom Magliery from Department of Chemistry. Right?
Yes,
Okay.
chemistry and biochemistry.
Yes.
We're 100% merged these days.
Awesome.
Hello. Okay, can you see that online now?
Yes, we see it. Thank you.
All right, good. So thanks for inviting me to come, Allison. And so yes, I'm a faculty member in chemistry and biochemistry. And Allison asked me to talk a little bit about putting together meeting abstracts. And I guess you guys are all getting ready to, or at least thinking about applying for where's the meeting is in
San Juan, Puerto Rico.
is in San Juan this year. Exciting. And is there a big group going?
Well, that's what this is for.
We're going to find out. We're going to try to get more people to go. Okay, cool. And have some of you done meeting abstracts before? You have? One before? Okay, all right, fair enough.
I've done lots.
How about you? Oh, yes, you have. Okay.
Yeah,
Couple.
yeah.
And folks online, have you done them before? Maybe. Uh-oh.
I haven't, no.
Okay, all right, very good. So we've got a couple, we've got everything from experienced people to people getting started. So I'm just gonna go through a couple of things that kind of are about how to think about them and how to set what structural things are useful, maybe a few helpful tips. I also will, I'll give you these slides, and then there's like there's an online webpage, an online presentation, and a paper, a journal article that all contain lots of useful things, some of which I might have stolen for this presentation. So, but with attribution, so it's all okay. So I just got finished doing this with students. My students are several of whom are going to American Chemical Society this fall. So we were just going through abstracts, and so it was a great opportunity to sort of think through some of this stuff. So why are you submitting an abstract? Probably the single most important thing, right, is it's research in progress. I mean, that's basically what you get to do. It's a part of a chain of things that you're going to do along the way in your research projects. Oftentimes you do give talks over completed projects, but also oftentimes, depending on the venue, you might give talks at very early stages in projects and talk about the motivations and things like that. And we'll talk a little bit about how that kind of venue has an effect on that, since SACNAS is kind of a special place where you can be at, I think, multiple different stages and submit an abstract. But it's also, you're going to do this because it will help you build your network. You find out from doing these things who else cares about them by who shows up and who comes and talks to you at your poster. And lots of students end up getting postdocs or graduate opportunities out of somebody coming up and talking to them at a poster. You're also telling people you're working on it, and that can make a difference for you as well in lots of different ways. But people, you might end up putting in a fellowship proposal or something like that later on, and people can remember that. Obviously, it's useful on resumes. It's something we look at in admissions, something people would look at for postdocs or even jobs that you've done these things. And it's definitely practice at writing and presentation, which is always a good thing. And one of the things I like about it, and that I use it with my students, is that it's a first draft of convincing people, not convincing people, but of thinking about what are the ways that you can convincingly articulate the significance of your work, even if it's early on, right? So eventually, for fellowship proposals, probably for publishing your paper, when you're writing your thesis, for all of those things, you're going to want to be able to describe the significance and importance of the work. And this is kind of frankly, slightly lower stakes way to be able to start those arguments, start thinking about what you're going to put there, and you'll get feedback on it. You'll get people who say to you, yeah, I think that this is a really interesting idea. Maybe you haven't heard about this other thing, maybe, and then you can think about how you're going to incorporate that when you write a paper or review or something like that. And so I find that it helps my students clarify what they know about their own work to write these things. And also another thing that it does is, you've probably noticed this in research, there's not a lot of deadlines, and that's not good for everybody, actually. Like the open-ended, so when you are like, oh man, I have to put this poster up on October 5th, you really want to get some stuff done for that. You really want, so I think that setting those intermediate deadlines also is something that helps take some of the free-form chaos out of the research journey. Okay, so when should you do this, and where should you do it? And those questions are extremely intertwined. There are conferences for reporting early results. There are conferences And some of those have sessions that are specifically aimed at very young researchers, at starting researchers. I don't mean young in age, I mean people who are just starting a project. And then there's also specialized conferences where you're going to mostly see people talking about pretty complete stories. So, a few different kinds of things along the way that you should be thinking about. Local meetings, those are things like at Ohio State. Those are great ways, they cost nothing. You can get there for free. When you have a chance, apply to those. And because it's a great way to get some feedback, see what people think. There's often regional meetings where it's really easy to get to them. ACS runs a central regional meeting. There's a very famous RNA meeting here, or that's often in the area, driving distance anyway. And again, the expectation of those regional conferences is that people are going to have because it's easier to get to them and they want to bring a group together, people have a broad range they're at a bunch of different stages in their research. When you start getting towards national meetings, it can change a little bit, but I mean, there are places like SACNAS or Novachet intentionally instruct that they're going to accept researchers at different stages, right? So you should be clear in your abstract about what stages you are, but they accept abstracts from people who are starting to people who are finished. And as a matter of fact, they have undergraduate and graduate research sessions, and I think at both of those conferences. Larger disciplinary organizations like American Cancer Society or American Chemical Society, people tend to talk about more complete stuff. And then, when you go to really highly specialized conferences, like in the sciences, the Gordon conferences or whatever, those are 200-person conferences on very special topics where everyone is an expert. And, usually that's like a capstone event. My students will go to one of those their last year as a grad student. And there's other kinds besides the Gordon conferences. There's Keystone, Cold Spring Harbor Lab. And I think there are also variants of those things in physics and math and stuff like that, but that I don't know as well. But those kinds of conferences are very useful, but they're more like, getting you out on the next stage of your career. So what do you need to do? First thing is read the directions. Many students are, one of the most disappointing things when we start this procedure is when a student is like, I have this abstract, I'm interested in going to this meeting. The abstract deadline is noon today. That's too late. So, if you're interested in these things, make sure you know the deadlines. There are likely not exceptions to the deadlines, or actually many conferences run these things called last minute abstracts, where it's not really that last minute, but like maybe for like 2 weeks or a month after the abstract deadline, they'll shove you in, but they'll put you in some really non-optimal thing. Like they already will have set like all the people working on earth science in this room, and then there'll be like all the late people off in this room. And it's like it's definitely a purgatory kind of situation. So don't do that. There might be fees associated depending, oftentimes there's no fee to submit the abstract. Sometimes there's fees when, to go to the conference or something like that, but sometimes there is a small fee for submitting. So take a look at that. The submission instructions themselves, make sure you understand how to do that. You don't want to be at the deadline and not know how to log in. Sometimes you have to create a membership or something like that actually requires an overnight time. I've had students run into that kind of stuff. And also everything we're about to talk about in terms of the structure, it doesn't matter what I say here, do what they say. Okay, so sometimes it will say nothing, but a lot of times it will say, we want you to actually write these 5 sections and use these titles and put them in bold. And then you're going to do that. And if you don't do that, your abstract could be returned or rejected. And in many places, they just reject. Sometimes if it's, especially for students, they'll ask you to fix it, but sometimes they won't, especially if they get way too many. And you should also, when you're getting to submitting, you might need stuff like getting everybody's affiliations exactly right, certainly having everybody's names spelled right. You might need all of the emails. You might need funding attribution. So you might need to ask your advisor what the number of the grant is or something like that. Like collect all of that information early on so you're not scrambling for it the minute that you're looking to do this. And There might be required graphical elements. Some places want you to provide a picture that they can put, when sometimes they'll actually literally ask you for a photo. Sometimes they'll ask you for some kind of graphical element that would like help tell the story for the web page. Sometimes they just want a figure from the paper. I mean, there's all kinds of things. And also the opposite is also true. Some say there are no graphical elements. So make sure you read the directions on those things and are properly set up to do that. And then the next thing is, we talked about these different kinds of meetings. So understand your audience. In a general sense, all of us think probably that more people know and care about what we know and care about than really do. So it's almost, no matter how narrow the audience is, don't, whatever, like I'll tell you an example. In my lab, what we do a lot of subcloning of genes, making mutants of genes, and we use oligonucleotides for that. And I almost always have to correct students the first time because we call them oligos in the lab. Like oligos is not really a real word. It's like just a shortened version of a word. Or like when we run a lot of genetic selections, and the things that pass the selection we call hits. That's not like a real thing. You shouldn't say like the hits in this, like that's not normal. Those are things that we say just around the lab to each other. They're not formal language, but also they're not language that not everybody's going to understand. Same thing with abbreviations. I mean, DNA, yeah, you're probably safe. But pretty much there's not that many things that you shouldn't spell out the first time. It's just assume that. And of course, obviously, as you go from, I'm going to go to a conference that the public might attend, I'm going to go to a conference that all scientists are going to attend, like SACNAS, although SACNAS also has non-scientists, so I'm not even saying that right. If you're going to your area like biology, if you're a very specific, like the language and nomenclature those places will accept is different. And you should think a little bit about that. But like I say, still, I would mostly spell out acronyms and stuff like that, at least the first time you use them, no matter how much. Oh, so it's not going to do anything. Okay, here we go. Uh-oh, now I've probably done something. Okay. So, okay, here, oh, let's see, I think I went through, yes. So basic things you have to think about. You need a title, you need the author and affiliations, like I said. That, by the way, that's not totally trivial. You probably, like, if you think the authorship is just you, first of all, you're probably wrong if you're in the sciences, but you should at least, if you're working with an advisor, run that by the advisor. And also, you might end up wanting to include results from other people to tell a fuller story as part of the poster or talk. And then not only do you need to get everything right, you also are going to have to run it by them. So give a little bit of thought to that. General structure, most of these abstracts, again, you're going to follow the directions, but typically 250 to 300 words, 5 to 10 sentences. Those are basically going to fall into some kind of introduction where you explain the general area you're talking about and your specific problem. You're going to give a couple sentences of explanation about what you really did. You're going to probably give the biggest section 2 or 3 sentences about your results, and then you're going to briefly talk about conclusions. That's pretty much the structure. Now, like I just said, this is general, and you should look at the specific instructions for any particular area or conference. But here's a few things to think about. The title, a lot of times we sort of like put that together and then we work really hard on the text. The title is, when you're flipping through the list of abstracts, that's what people read, right? So also work really hard on the title. More people are going to read the title than read the abstract. So definitely needs revision. Should be simple and direct. It's become more common to have question titles. So like these are examples I stole from a paper, but do antibiotics alter the outcomes of sepsis, as opposed to early use of antibiotics reduces mortality in patients, but not those with sepsis. Both of those are great titles, I think. And I think, there might be some requirements about this too. But I think that really BuzzFeed type headlines have had an effect on this in all seriousness. And I think that question type titles have become more common as a result. You should definitely try to avoid abbreviations or acronyms or jargon. It's great to have them be catchy, but I would say not distractingly cute. I think that the titles that you want people to focus on what the abstract is about. So, just make sure you bear that in mind. And then also, there might be requirements about stuff like it will say you're going to format. Sometimes you format the thesis, the abstract yourself and give them a PDF. Sometimes they will format it, but they'll often give you instructions about stuff like title case or sentence case, like only capitalize the first letter and proper nouns, or capitalize all the nouns. And getting that stuff right shows people that you paid attention and you have attention to detail, and those are worthwhile things to take a second to make sure you're following the rules on. Okay, and then the beginning, the intro of it is they don't all have to go exactly like this, but this is a very typical structure. A broad statement of the research area that you're interested in, followed by what exactly you're doing, and then a brief statement of why it's important. And not all studies are hypothesis driven, but if they are hypothesis driven, this is usually the right place to just directly say what the hypothesis is. So, from my lab, people will typically say something about, they'll start by talking about how we know a lot about how proteins fold, but there are still significant gaps in understanding the stability of mutants of proteins. And then in this particular study, we're interested in how the sequence of loops affects the stability of proteins. And to test that, we're going to use an approach where we build a large collection of mutants in the loop of some model protein, right? That's the kind of thing that we're talking about. Notice that these are short. This is not when we say introduction, I don't mean the introduction of a paper, right? This is a one sentence type introduction typically that you're going to use. So these obviously have to be, they have to be very concise. They have to deliver a lot of information in a small number of words. So we'll talk more about this in a minute, but lots of revision helps a lot with that. But I would also say, don't be afraid, just write it out and then you can tighten it up, right? So, but thinking about, something along this lines for the first, let's say the first 4 to sentences is probably right. 3 or 4 sentences is probably right. And then you're going to have a little bit of a statement of the methods, typically 1 or 2 sentences. And I think the most important thing I can say is make sure that people walk away understanding what you actually did. And again, it's very easy to say some technical stuff and actually leave it not that clear what the experiment really was. And it's much, much more important to give people an idea of what the experiment was than to get a bunch of technical detail into it. If they like it, they're going to come see your poster or listen to your talk, and that's how they'll learn the technical detail. So it's not a materials and methods section. There's not going to be a bunch of micromolars and numbers like that. You're going to basically talk about in general what the methods are. Also, stuff like how did you test the statistical significance? Did you receive IRB approval? For the purpose of an abstract, unless you're instructed to do something like list your IRB approval, which is not unheard of, it's assumed that stuff is all taken care of. Yeah.
What is what is that?
Institutional Review Board. So that's basically for human subjects research,
Okay.
or IACUC is for animal research. So those are things that if you publish a paper in areas where you do things with humans or with animals, you will say that what the source of the approval was, but not in an abstract. In an abstract, we're going to assume you know that stuff. That's normally the case. And the other thing is, this is just a small thing, but a lot of these are published, a lot of abstracts end up being published in an open forum, and it is usually wise, even if you're using some proprietary thing, not to use the proprietary name of it or trademarks or things like that. So, you can talk about dyes, but maybe you don't say the name of the exact dye that you're using or something like that. Yeah.
Like if I'm using Python, I would just say open source code.
I mean, I'm not sure Python is really proprietary. Like, I don't think that's really protected by, but if you were using something that's like, 3M's specific thing or whatever, yeah, then I think something like what you have, the describing it succinctly is better. Okay. So the biggest section, even though it's not the biggest section in the slides here, is typically going to be the results. But I guess what I want to say, and I'll say this again in another way in a minute, is bearing in mind, like you're telling a story here, and you're not reporting out everything you did. You're not telling a chronological picture. Like it's not important for this purpose what the path to the results was. Like I did this first, and then we discovered. No, you're just going to tell them this is the most important thing that I'm telling you that came out of these results. Now, there might be more than one really important thing. I'm not saying you can only have one. But what I am saying is it's not useful to put minor results into the abstract. You can put those in comparison to the major results on your paper or in your paper, on your poster or whatever. But this is succinct. You're making sure people come away with the message. And the message is going to be about the specific results. Sometimes results are, best presented. It's really hard to write them if you don't have either a table or a figure of some kind. There are some abstracts allow that. Some abstracts do not. Like you have to follow the directions. If you do need to use them though, just bear in mind that they are not like the table or a figure in a paper. They basically should, in an ideal case, they require no explanation. It's just going to say figure 1 and maybe the title. And then you're going to label the columns and rows in a table. You're going like also, and also like details that are too hard to ascertain quickly, try to avoid. Like you don't need a bunch of concentrations in micromolar if you can just tell people this one got 10% better. Right? Like those are things that belong in an abstract, are things that people can apprehend quickly. No, if you need to footnote it, you're doing something wrong. Like no footnotes on the tables in a paper, in an abstract. Okay, and then you do need some sort of conclusion. It should be concise and impactful. And I don't mean by that the result, obviously it should be appropriate for how important the result is. But what I mean is it should be very clear what you're saying. It shouldn't be either less or more than what you really are able to conclude from this. It also should be clear how it was. You told us at the beginning what your hypothesis or goal was. And it helps to tie it back to that very directly, so directly that you actually echo some of the words from your hypothesis. So it's like really clear to people how the result of the experiment answered the question or made progress towards the answer of a question or whatever by echoing. And if there's one thing that actually gets abstract, besides not following the directions, the other thing that gets abstracts thrown out when there are places that really review them carefully tends to be like voluminous and large extrapolations beyond the data. So like first of all, the conclusion section should not be half the abstract. And secondly, the conclusion section should not be about how, this effect happened in this particular cell from this particular compound. And, there's reason to think that you're going to be able to cure all cancers based on that result, right? Like even if you think that it does have huge prospects, that's not what this is for. This is for reporting the result and being clear about the result you've reported. Also, a huge number of abstracts that are presented, and even ones that are actually published, end it with some crazy statement that is something like, this merits further investigation or something like that. That's a complete waste of space. Lots of places will actually force you to edit stuff like that out because they're printing it somewhere and they don't want to waste the space. But it's reasonable to say if there's a clear next thing that either you're doing, like at the time you submit the abstract, it's often 6 or 9 months before when the thing happens. So you might say, I'm going to do this next. And then maybe on the real poster, you're even going to put a little teaser about that stuff that's been happening. But it shouldn't just be there's no point in making a very broad statement about this. It's not really interesting to anybody. They will decide for themselves if they think it merits further research. So you can just, but if you have a specific idea of what you're going to do next, that's a generally valuable thing to do. It's like most all research science, like these are best played as team sports. I think that so having people work with you on them makes a huge amount of difference. Why is that true? Because this is writing like any writing, okay? And any writing is writing where you need you basically, it's almost always best to write it long, write it as you think of it, and then revise it down to the right size. Because you're going to discover that you can remove usually a lot of what you wrote the first time. And it actually, not only will it make just as much sense, it will be much sharper because it will focus just on the stuff that really matters. That's both in terms of the actual content, but also the words. I mean, getting rid of terms like, because of the fact that. No, you don't need the fact that. Because was good enough. So, erase those words that you don't need, that don't actually help anything in the sentence. And it certainly helps to work on it a little bit and let it percolate in your brain. So give this some time. But another reason is you should definitely have multiple people read it. And I tell my own students, have somebody else in the lab read it, at least one other person, maybe a couple people. Obviously, all of the co-authors need to at least approve it, but usually they'll have some comments. And then it's really helpful to have a non-expert or even a non-scientist, if you're a scientist or if you're a sociologist, a non-sociologist, read it for clarity and English. Even though they may not be trained or expert enough to understand exactly what it's all about, if they can't say back to you what the main point is, then even as a non-expert, then something is not right. Like the main point should come through to even non-experts. And of course, things like grammar and spelling and stuff like that, that's easy to read through 100 times is looking right to you. Somebody's going to see the very first time. Those are super useful. So I highly recommend leaving some time for all of that. A few other tips, like I said, avoid jargon, symbols and abbreviations unless they're very broadly accepted. It will almost always make it better to make it shorter. As I said, it's much better to have it be clear than have more stuff. If you have to choose between, maybe I should talk about this second thing, but I'm going to have to really try to figure out how to explain that here. That's an easy decision. Leave it out. Okay. So it doesn't, if it doesn't add that, it's usually not worth the extra complication. The two things that you're really trying to get across are the question and results. Like if those two things are not clear to people, then it hasn't succeeded. As I said before, overreach is a common reason for rejection. Another thing that I think a lot of people will do, especially the first time, is that they'll jump around in the structure. And it almost always helps people to be able, especially when they're looking at 100 of them in a book, to quickly scan through them if you keep a structure, even if it's not required. So it might not say like you must do this, but you can still do it anyway. When there are certain key words that are almost always a problem. Like I'm sure the word respectively, like we made changes to these animal models using these two different compounds respectively. Like nobody understands that sentence anymore. What's respective? Did you use two different compounds on both of the models? Or that means you've made it way too complicated. Think about simplifying it so that it's impactful. And the big thing that I would say that hopefully all of that distills to is that an abstract is a story. You're telling people a story. People understand stories. Nobody like I frequently tell my students when they give their research in progress talks, focus on the story, focus on what you actually did, because people care about stuff that's about them, right? So like they would like to know, could I use those methods? Is that something that's useful for me? They will probably forget, no matter how important your result is, they probably will forget your result, but they might forget, they might remember about how you got to it and what you said was important about it. Less is more, avoid highly detailed results, minor results, absolute values when, specific, when relative things will do, detailed methods, over extrapolation, references unless they're necessary, or sometimes they're required, but usually they are not. And then, like I said, have a non-expert tell you the main point of what you wrote, have a friend who's not a scientist or whatever you do, and figure out see what they think the main point is. And if you're not happy with their answer, then you have more work to do. One last quick thing, like I said, graphical elements, they're often not allowed. If they are allowed, they're supposed to be worth 1,000 words, which means you don't want to waste a bunch of words on them, right? So like it shouldn't be that they should be sufficiently self-explanatory that you don't need a bunch of words around them. Little captioning and notes. But like I said, do pay attention, because sometimes you have to make a graphical abstract. And I'll just say that when you make graphical abstracts, the graphical abstract is also supposed to tell the story. So it's best not to be like, figure 3 in my paper is the most interesting paper, so that's will be what I put up. Because if somebody just looks at figure 3 in your paper, they probably have no clue what it's about, right? But if there's a schematic and like one pictorial result, and you can draw an arrow from one to the other, so a person can like appreciate what they're getting from just something schematic like that. Those things make good graphical abstracts. So that's really worth taking a quick look at. And as I said, I stole some of these examples from these sites. And so I will give these to Allison so she can hand them out and you can take a look at those. There's obviously more in them than I talked about today. What can we talk about? Have you guys started writing abstracts? Are you for SACNAS yet? What are you thinking about that we could help with?
I think my abstract for SACNAS this year is going to be way better from hearing you talk.
We also do. We give a workshop that's a little bit like this for this summer. There's a summer research program that Amy Furketich in Public Health and I run for students at liberal arts schools in Ohio. And last year we talked about like modern formats for scientific posters. I don't know if you've seen any of those, but there are a bunch of posters that are designed around like one text element. Like it will literally just be like a statement of the conclusion in like 60-point text, and then just like a specific arrangement of just a few supporting things so you can talk about. The whole idea is you're just going to attract somebody's attention and they're going to come over and talk to you and you're going to talk to them about it and nothing else, right? And I think that there are actually whole conferences that have required people to use formats like that, especially in recent years, because if you go to a virtual conference, having like a 12-panel poster is terrible. So those kinds of formats work really well. But I think it's made a big impact. And I think that's kind of a way to think about reframing the abstract too, is like, what is that thing I would put in 60-point text? That's the thing I want to make sure everybody gets out of it. If you guys want to, I don't know if you guys are going to put abstracts together. If you want to do like a workshop with them, we could do that. That's what we do in Ohio 5. Everybody comes and we do groups of 3 and people read them to each other and then we read them out as a group. So
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
I'm very busy next couple weeks, so if you wanted to.
Yeah. No, I'm not telling you have to, but and we could also do it by Zoom, but yeah, those things do help. So
I'd like to do that.
Yeah.
I've just used the same here.
Yeah.
And I know I'm gonna have to do something else eventually, so.
Sure, absolutely. Well, even if not everybody wants to do it, if there's just a few people, we can still do it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great idea.
That's a good idea to bring to
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool. Oh, hopefully I didn't ignore. I don't know if I can actually hear you guys online anymore because I messed with the volume a little bit. So, but if there's any questions for people online, you can either put it in the chat or say it to me. Anything you want to talk about?
They don't have the question.
No, but thank you so much for your time.
Oh yeah, my pleasure. Okay, we're set.
Cool. I do have a question if that's okay about like,
Thanks, Marcella.
especially for SACNAS, like we're submitting the abstract so far in advance.
Yeah.
And some results might not be
Yes.
fully realized.
Yep.
So what's your advice on like including the expected results or
Yeah.
expected conclusions?
So I definitely don't think you should put expected conclusions in. I mean, I think it's okay for you to talk, like, I mean, you're going to focus more on methods. I don't personally subscribe to the theory. I know there are people that do this. I do not subscribe to the theory that you should, bet on what you hope the answer is going to be and pull the abstract if it doesn't turn out to be the answer. I think that's a crazy thing to do. I also like, this is intended to be a lower stakes, high value experience at SACNAS. You know what I mean? Like if you have a great result or twice as great a result, it doesn't matter, right? Like that's not important for this. So I would not do that. I think that you can talk about in the methods, like the scope of the experiment and make it clear, this is stuff that's done. And this is the next things these are the next things I'm doing. And then when you really present the poster, maybe you'll get to talk about those things and maybe you won't. But I don't generally advise people to guess where they're going to be. I know that some of my colleagues do subscribe to that theory though. So I don't know if your advisor told you to do it, then I guess you can negotiate with your advisor about it. But it's dangerous and looks silly. Cool. All right. Well, good luck, everybody. I hope you enjoy and that you all get to go to Puerto Rico.